You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to episode 195 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese. Eric with a new background tonight and a little button up. We're getting dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, we're house sitting. So this is someone else's place behind me.
Hey, MTV Cribs. Let's get it popping.
I mean, I can, well, I'm not gonna tour, but that'll be like almost very invasive. I'm not gonna do that.
Just have the camera following you, like, yeah, come this way.
Yeah, look, hey, check out how many bathrooms or whatever. I don't, whatever they say. Yeah, I mean, the bathroom is right where that last game belongs. What a segue.
I dropped that Nick Sirianni right over here.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's where I always feel. How I feel, at least about the coordinators and a lot of things about this team right now. It's just not a fun time.
Let's talk about actual fun times. I mean, how was your New Year's, man? New Year. I'm in the habit of saying New Year's for the longest, but how was your New Year, man?
That was great. That was fantastic. That was a great time.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, we just stayed in with the lady. We were just watching some of that, New Year's Eve, just random. We watched something that had a bunch of country artists on there, and then we went over to the other channel, and they were like, "Here's Green Day," and I'm like, "Dude, it's like 2024." But I love Green Day, so I'm cool with it. And then LL Cool J's playing like "Mama Said Knock You Out," and I'm just like, "All right, but it's 2024." But go.
So you don't like the classics? Is what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying that it would be dope to like the 90s are popping still. That's what I'm trying to say. Like hey, can we top the 90s at some point? That's what I'm challenging everybody.
I feel like
that's it, right? Don't you feel that way, Brian? We can't top the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s were just wow. The 90s were wow. Yeah, just thinking about it, it was nostalgic, man. Like we grew up in I feel like we grew up in a perfect era. Like we were in the in-betweeners. Like we dealt with the old technology and we experienced the birth of the new technology, right? I feel like, there's no better era. But there have been better eras in Philadelphia Eagles football.
Oh my God. Yes.
Unfortunately, the Eagles embarrassingly lost to the Arizona Cardinals 35-31. Definitely the worst loss, I think, this season. Worst loss possibly in Nick Sirianni's coaching tenure. But let's start from the ground up, right? Later on the show we'll preview the Eagles and Giants with Mikey Fresh. He was with us last season to cover the Eagles and Giants. But for now, let's start from the ground up. Let's talk about the defense. I feel like a lot of people are I don't even know how to describe the defense, man. They're really bad. It's just bad.
I believe that the personnel is never going to fit the scheme, and this season in that sense reminds me of a lot of like Gannon's first season, and not that Gannon is a fantastic defensive coordinator. Like I think that he is, but I think fantastic. Like I think he's a good defensive coordinator. Fantastic, I think is I think a little bit too much of a compliment, but he in his first a year with the Eagles did not have the personnel. We all remember that. I feel like that's the stage that we're in. Like maybe the coordinator, I don't think Patricia is the answer, but was Desai really so bad in comparison? Like I'm starting to ask myself that.
Yeah, because Desai, he had games, like he had moments. Patricia has not had a moment with this defense. Right. They've allowed less yards per game, which is great. But you just allow the Arizona Cardinals to walk up and down. The Arizona Cardinals had the controlled time possession like it was just they're on the practice field. Like it was atrocious.
It was like 40-20 almost.
It was terrible. You allow them to do whatever they want to do. You allow them to march up and down the field. I'm going to go back to to the Nick Sirianni issue, man. Like, heavy is the head, right?
Yeah, but also, we too kind of have to admit to ourselves his offense does work.
It does.
We
Like
saw we've
that, I
seen
will
it, we've
admit.
seen it work before.
Yes.
So I think the issue is not that his tools don't work, is he don't know how to work with his tools anymore. He
And
doesn't know
that's
how
such
to
a
get the
weird thing,
offensive
though.
coordinator out of his way.
And I have a question. What is it with the Eagles and offensive coordinators? Because Philadelphia has tremendous offensive coordinators that take them, give them 2 years, they do amazing. Frank Reich, um, more recently, Shane Steichen. We also this guy. Oh, his name always escapes me. The guy that he was calling plays with, not calling plays, but he was Chip Kelly's offensive coordinator. Last game of the season before Chip, right after Chip got fired, he was calling the plays. It was the season we had DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, I know you're talking about Butch Davis.
No. Damn.
No,
If somebody could get me the name in the chat, that would be
it
great.
was something like that.
But he did stellar, right? In his last game at the Eagles didn't hire him as a head coach, but in that last game, he did pretty damn good with that offense. But it's the weirdest thing. Like the Eagles, they have great offensive coordinators almost like every other year. And those in between years, those leap years, they have these terrible guys. They have the Press Taylors of the world. They have the Brian Johnsons of the world. Who else can go on? I mean, there's been a handful of them. I mean, even Juan Castillo, defensive coordinator. Like, there's just something weird about Philadelphia that every we'll call it the Eagles leap year. They just have terrible coordinators, and this is one of those years because
Yeah.
on paper, this team is as talented as any other team on the league. Like, if you tell me you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts on the same team with DeAndre Swift and an offensive line that they currently have, I'm thinking there's a top. Yes, Pat Shermer. There it is. Thank you, Marshall.
Pat Shermer, that's what it was. Yep. Okay.
I wonder what he's doing nowadays.
Well,
If you tell me you have these
maybe
guys
we
on a
can ask
roster,
him.
right? Offensive coordinator for sale. These guys should be winning games like this. Like, they should be blowing out teams like the Cardinals. Hassan Reddick shouldn't be dropping back into coverage when he's one of your best pass rusher.
Yeah. No,
Why?
that's absolutely true.
Like, what's going
Obviously, you're
on?
not the defensive personnel, for what they're worth, are still not being put in the best position. And you nailed it with an example right there with Son Reddick going into coverage. But that was a few times. Like, yeah, he does primarily rush, but I guess you're trying to find something that works. Like, it's obviously a last ditch effort, and you don't want to see that as your fail safe pretty much when you're about to enter the postseason. Like, it's the defense. I don't think ever was going to be something where we're going to sit there and say it was going to be solid this year.
Mhm.
So we have on one end rookies who we see moments of, like we did. And then we have veterans who aren't just veterans. They are like aged, like this is the last call, like veterans, where maybe they've hung around. I don't think that they've hung around too long, but maybe they've hung around and where I don't know what the depth is of this team, because Josh Sweat's starting to struggle a little bit. I
The
mean,
rotation is not that deep anymore. And I was watching Baldy's video, if his breakdown of Jordan Davis. He said Jordan Davis pretty much just walking around on the field and he's overweight, which to me is eye
that's fair.
opening. Like, that's a little wild to state, and it's a little wild. I mean, a little embarrassing for the Eagles, in my opinion, because this was a first round pick, right? This was supposed to be the guy that lines up next to Jalen Carter and handles the run while Jalen Carter handles the pass. And we have seen none of that. And you think about it, if this guy's not producing or holding his weight on the team, they're technically down a man in that rotation. And they released Derek Barnett, who's possibly doing a little bit more.
Yeah, like they've definitely just we've went out of our way all season to say that the defense lives and dies with that defensive line, and when that starts to break down, everything else has just been exploited for what it's worth. But there's not really like Shaq Leonard wasn't an upgrade, because Shaq Leonard is basically the standard of our linebackers right now. That's why he's not an upgrade. Brandon Morrow hasn't tackled somebody at the
Nicholas Morrow.
point of tackle. I'm sorry, Brandon. Yes, Brandon Morrow is a completely different sport. I apologize. Nicholas Morrow has not tackled somebody at the point of contact or for a loss. Pretty much, I mean, geez, I've only seen him, I feel like, tackle people for gains of 5 yards. Like, he's getting run through, and
And it's
that's your
embarrassing.
second guy. That's your second guy for the most part.
It's embarrassing. And meanwhile, I mean, TJ Edwards took a hometown discount to go with the Chicago
Yeah.
Bears, and he had a stellar season. Kaiser White, I feel like the Eagles may have not made an attempt to bring him back, but he had a hell of a year in Philly. And then Martian Lynch mentioned in the chat, the Eagles chose Jordan Davis over Kyle Hamilton, a safety, a position of need. Brian Branch too. We didn't go for him. We went for, I think, with Nolan Smith instead. It's I hate to say this because excuse me. I don't want to take a sly at Howie Roseman because I feel like the GM did his job, right? He got the guys that can help bring a championship to Philly. This to me stems right back to the coach, the head coach, because you came into Philly with veteran coordinators. Granted, Jonathan Gannon wasn't as seasoned as like a Shane Steichen, but he was the top dog in the league to everybody. Everybody was saying Jonathan Gannon is the new upcoming greatest thing of all time. And in this season, you came in with Sean Desai, who doesn't really have the track record that you want to bring to the Super Bowl team. Brian Johnson, who was part of your team last year, he understands your philosophy. But why the hell is it like you gave Brian Johnson the value menu of McDonald's as opposed to give him the entire menu 1 through 12? Like, that's what it feels like. It feels weird. Like, there's a leash somewhere in this offense. I mean, we'll just segue to the offense. There's a leash somewhere in this offense, and it makes zero sense as to why there is a leash. Jalen Hurts looks like he's playing in the worst offense I've ever seen in my life. A.J. Brown hasn't had a touchdown in all of December. That's crazy if you think about it. The guy started off the season on a historical pace. No touchdowns in December. Devontae Smith just rolled his ankle because you guys called a screen pass to Kenny Gainwell on, what was it, like 3rd and 20 or 3rd and 16 or some crap like that.
Terrible.
How do people suck at their job is my question.
I think it goes back to, and I've noticed this as a trend throughout the season, that there's been a big reliance on chunk and big plays on offense. I mean, I think that's also a part of the reason why you have so many people who have crossed these milestones like 1,000 yards, because there's been the big play. That came easy during the beginning of the year when the team was 10-0 or 10-1. Since then, since you went through the gauntlet, if you will, and then that's been starting the downward spiral that this team is on, there's just been typical mismanagements, and the big plays aren't coming as easy, where the intermediate game isn't as effective. And I think that's because there's a lack of coordination in the intermediate game. Like, I think that there's so much set up between those screens and these quarterback draws, if you will, and these RPO runs, that the over the top play just isn't, like, they're expecting it. Like, that's, I think, what they mean by predictable.
It feels like they're running a college offense, which I get predicated. Like, ideally this should be transitioning to the NFL, right? But I feel like you're running a college offense that makes zero sense for this team.
Right.
You're not using your weapons. You're not using Dallas Goedert. You're
have guys that can go
overusing
across the middle.
Yeah, legit. You're overusing Jalen Hurts as a running quarterback, and the guy was a top pocket passer in the league last season. We know he can throw the ball. We know he could do it with accuracy, and we know he could do it efficiently. You have A.J. Brown, definitely a top 5 wide receiver, maybe top 2, in my opinion. You see across the pond, not even across the pond, but across the nation in Texas, where Mike McCarthy is putting CeeDee Lamb in a position to succeed, which also puts Dak Prescott in a position to succeed. They're running CeeDee everywhere on this offense, in the slot, on the outside, wherever they want, and he's open. He's finding ways to get open. You're asking A.J. Brown to just run deep every single time when the guy, he's like a Deebo Samuel. The ball gets on his hands. He's a running back. He could take out anybody. I'm gonna ask you what I hope to be a fair question, right?
Yeah.
At what point as a head coach, as a coordinator, like I was reading the transcripts from Nick Sirianni, and he's saying that we're not concerned right now. It's not time for panic.
It is. It's been
I feel
time.
I feel like I feel like panicking isn't the worst thing in the world.
I
He was
didn't
kind of
hear your
saying,
question all the way out, but if it has to do with what time should he have panicked?
well, I was gonna say, I mean, should they be using panic as an advantage in this scenario right now? Week 18, should they be acting like the sky is falling? Could actually help this team turn around for the playoffs?
I mean, I think we're late to the occasion by more than a few weeks. I think you're late to the occasion. Somewhere between that San Francisco and Dallas game. That those two.
The two blowouts.
Yeah, that's when you had a little bit of a cause for panic, because even though there's been the losses to the Seahawks and the Cardinals, you're always were measuring yourself to be a contender, and those contending teams are the Cowboys and the 49ers. And the moment that they ran it down twice back to back, right? So they ran it down, and now no longer do people really look at the Eagles as a threat to contend in the for a Super Bowl. I think that was the time to panic, because I hear this word, and this word means two different things.
Don't say standard. I'll lose my mind if you say
No, it
standard.
does. And you're going to lose your mind. This word means two different things in two different sports. When Tortorella for the Flyers mentions the standard, there's a damn standard. There's not a buzzword. Sirianni mentions there's a standard. Well, there should have been at least urgency before a standard. Now, you can't just implement standard. You can't just say, hey, there's a standard. It sounds like a strong message. Tortorella comes with a reputation where you know the standard. Sirianni had a good run last year, but it's clear that the coordinators were really the cogs in the machine, and Sirianni is not the machine. So maybe right now, maybe you don't preach a standard when there's not a standard. You're still trying to find that standard.
Do you also have an issue with him saying, and him and Brian Johnson? Let's put them both on the divide right now, because they both. I feel like we as analysts and also as officially credentialed reporters for these teams, we had to hold ourselves to a certain standard of responsibility. Like, I can't go out there calling a guy out of his name, right? But both of them together, for lack of a better term, foolishly said that they were not trying to be predictable with their calls on that sequence of when they lost the yardage. It was QB draw, screen pass. At what point, where's the pride? Like, where's the pride? Where's the gohaness? Where are you? Like, where are you right now? Because all of South Philadelphia is looking at you. Are like, you were given the perfect recipe to create the ultimate dish.
Yeah.
And
all the ingredients are still there, by the way. It's not like they're gone.
Exactly. And I want to point that out, because a lot of people are comparing like Jalen's regression to like Carson. And I feel like it's two totally different ends of the spectrum. Carson was regressing because Carson was just, all the injuries, the concussions and everything was getting to him, right? Jalen is still elite. It's just Jalen's stuck in a room with small-minded people, for lack of a better term.
I agree with you, because even if you look at numbers, is it a down year? Yeah, in comparison, because he was actually elite last year. He's not elite this year, but I would say he's still probably, I would say comfortably he's a top 10 quarterback. So it's a good year. It's a good year. You know what I mean? But it's not an elite year. And I think that the way that kind of shakes out is, you do have to work with the minds that are with you. Hurts and the players, their job is to execute the play called. And if you can, if there's a read or whatever that they can make it the line, they'll do it. But the plays that are called are not necessarily plays that are going to be putting the offense in a position
to succeed.
To succeed. So that's really what it comes down to.
And I completely agree with that. And it's funny you mentioned that, like Jalen being surrounded by people that are just like
Like comfortably numb, like Nate just said. That's exactly how I feel because I can no longer be mad.
And yeah,
I'm exhausted of being mad.
and
Like
it's
that's
funny.
where I'm
Like
at.
New Year's Eve, I was they lost. I told my wife like this team foolishly lost, embarrassingly. Like you lost, right? And then everybody came to the house and the party, and everybody was kind of mentioning the loss. I'm like, yeah, a bad team loses. A bad football team can lose if they play a bad game, and that was a bad football team playing a bad game. Um, but I feel like Martian is Martian and Marshawn is throwing me off so much today. He says it right here, like the key thing, this team has no fight in them, right? And what you said about having Jalen surrounded by, lack of a better word, incompetent people, you can see that. I mean, you see the Quez walking past a couple a week or two ago to from Jalen, and that was intercepted. Quez was, he could have thrown himself on the floor, made up the pass interference look, pretty damn convincing, or you could have fought for that ball. We saw it in the Super Bowl, like the pass interference again with Quez. You could have made it more convincing, or you could have fought a little bit more for the ball. There's no fight in this team, and there is, it stems from the top to the bottom. There's no urgency. There's no like the lights in the NovaCare complex should be flashing red. There should be somebody should have pulled the fire alarm right after they lost to the 49ers. And we we do have Mikey in the background, right? I do want to bring him on just because what's going on, Mike? You did mention
what's cooking.
You threw it out there in the chat that Sirianni won't be here too long.
Thank God.
Yeah. How you guys doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. How's everything going with you?
It's going well. Yeah, my daughter's going to be 4 in a week, and my son is 6 months old. So they're witnessing another Giants atrocity of a season. So that's unfortunate from our side.
You know what? I wouldn't even say that yet because even if all this here again, I don't know if all the starters are going to be playing this week, right? But even if they do, I don't think I'm not putting it past Tyrod. Tyrod should be the starter in New York if all quarterbacks were healthy. By the way,
well, yeah. I mean, next year they're going to draft somebody. They're going to draft somebody next year for sure. But I was listening to you guys talk a little bit about the free fall. Everybody's freaking out. What's going on over there? They want to get rid of Sirianni. Seems to be taking a lot of the heat from what I'm hearing from you guys, and then from what I'm reading. Is that accurate?
I mean, to me, it's like I keep on saying every week, heavy is the head, right?
Yeah, that's it.
If you're the head coach, like things gonna fall into your lap because this is the team. This is the game plan you put in front of Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman in your interview. You said you want your defense to block explosive plays. You said you want your offense to be explosive, and they have been neither this season.
When I look at a head coach, I look at what do you bring to the table? What do you do? So you have offensive minded coaches, you have defensive minded coaches, and then you have CEO coaches who don't necessarily have an offensive or defensive background, like John Harbaugh's from special teams. Guys that have been doing it a while. They don't call plays, but they're just CEO head coaches. And when I look at Sirianni, he lost both coordinators, and that seems to have been really taking a hit. He has an offensive background, but what does he really do? What does he really bring to the table? I don't know the answer to that, but when I look at a head coach, if he's an offensive coach, I look at, hey, how's their offense doing? If he's a defensive coach, or is their defense good? Brandon Staley was a disaster, but he's a defensive coach and their defense was horrible. That's usually not a good sign.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I look at Sirianni, I start asking myself, what does he bring to the table? And one of the things I was talking to a few of my friends about was from afar, and you guys are more inside than I am with the Eagles and around the Eagles, but it seems as if they're a very front office driven organization throughout the years. Whenever there's been a head coaching, I don't want to say battle with front office, but whenever there's been a little bit of a downward adversity, Howie Roseman has won out, and he's done a fantastic job, by the way, building the roster. Of course, he's made some mistakes over the years, but what GM doesn't, right? You're going to make mistakes when you're in this business, and he's done a great job building a really talented roster. But with Chip Kelly, then with Doug Peterson, the guy won a Super Bowl, and now with Nick Sirianni, you just get the feeling from afar that he's going to be the one that ultimately takes the heat for it maybe this year. I don't even know. That would be crazy. I know Josina Anderson put that tweet out that an NFC East coaching change might happen. But I think like the Eagles front office, for right or wrong, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman seem to view the organization as like almost like Jerry Krause back with the Bulls, like organizations win championships, not players, and almost like baseball, how they devalue the manager these days because the front office pulls all the strings. I don't think football can be run like that, but they've done it that way where it's almost like they feel as if they have all the power and they can stick anybody in the head coaching position because they accumulate such a talented roster and they view it as an insignificant part of the puzzle. So that's why, in my opinion, they're a very front office driven organization, and the head coach there is never going to have the power that ultimately he wants, or that ultimately, in my opinion, you need to sustain long term success. Hence, Doug Peterson winning a Super Bowl being gone, Nick Sirianni going to a Super Bowl. To be honest, like from the outside, I'd be shocked if he's there in 2 years. Just the way that it's unraveling lately. So that's the outside looking in. What do you got? Like, what is your take on that?
I think you're pretty much spot on. It's just I think because he went to a Super Bowl, if they do replace coordinators and that does actually help, then maybe that saves him. Like maybe
Yeah.
they find that as like a reason or an excuse, to
Mm-hmm.
pardon Sirianni from the coordinators. But no, I
Sure.
wouldn't be
Sure.
surprised if he was out as early as you were saying too, and for all the reasons that you just said.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the Chip Kelly era kind of caused this. The whole front office approach of where it's kind of like, okay, like we're gonna run this ship going our way pretty much.
Sure.
After giving Chip Kelly the keys to the kingdom, he literally burned it to the ground, getting rid of every talented player you could think of, which is still mind blowing till this day.
Yep.
But then how he came back and how he did his thing, he drafted Carson Wentz. A year later, he gets Alshon, he gets Torrey Smith. They put together a Super Bowl team. They win a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Last year, how he does the same thing after Doug Peterson's gone. They hired Nick Sirianni, and then last year they're in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
I know that they have a lot of say, right? I know they want certain things to look a certain way. Like they want the QB to have great QB numbers. Like that's a main thing for Jeffrey Lurie, apparently, from sources throughout the years.
Got it.
But I feel like with Nick Sirianni this offseason, they gave him a little bit of a longer leash, and he went with the Brian Johnson. He went with the Sean Desai, and he had to go with Sean Desai because Jonathan Gannon screwed us after the whole ordeal of him kind of taking the interview without anybody knowing, and then we lost Vic Fangio, who the
Yeah, I
Ravens
heard
just put up
they were
56
good.
points on.
They were gonna get Fangio, or they wanted him, right?
Yeah, because he was already in the building. He was helping out the team on the Super Bowl run, so he was a part of it.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree with you at all. I think that's what the case is, and I think next season, if this team blows it in the playoffs, which is very likely at this point, we're going to see more of a chokehold on Sirianni, where he does stay, but you're bringing in veterans and for an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. I just hope that they don't stick with Matt Patricia because I'm not seeing anything from this guy.
Yeah, man. It's gotten worse. It, it's funny that I know that like Jalen's taken a lot of heat, and when I was on with you guys 2 years ago, like or maybe it was last year, I think like one of my questions of Jalen Hurts is like I'd like to see him like gotta have it moments down late in the fourth quarter because you were steamrolling everybody last year and you played with a
Mhm.
lead, and this year like he proved that like he played pretty shitty in a lot of first halves, and then in the second half would do what he needed to do to win the game. So like maybe his numbers weren't as great, but there was a moment in time when they were 10-1, like a month ago. He was in the conversation for MVP, not with like gaudy numbers, but with like the wins and like the come from behind victories and things of that nature. And then they made the defensive coordinator change, which since that moment, it sounds like it's been like unraveling a little bit. And then, I just saw something a little while ago. I'm not sure if you guys touched on this earlier about like AJ Brown, like the problems in the locker room stem from AJ Brown or something. I'm not sure if there's anything to that other than, him just being a fiery wide receiver, right? But like it's funny, like Jalen Hurts, like is getting a lot of heat, but realistically, like it's the defense has been god awful the last month. Like it doesn't give them a chance to compete. When last year they had 70 sacks, and that was a big part of it. This year I'm watching Darren Orlovsky a few hours ago, like show that how easily they're blocked and nobody's getting off blocks, and like the scheme is bad, the effort's bad, like just like tearing it into their defense. And I'm just like watching, like, oh man, it's been a brutal last month. So, we've seen teams kind of flip switches before. From the outside, I think you might even struggle with that first round matchup against the NFC South champion. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's one and done. I'd be shocked if they won more than one playoff game this year, just with the way that it's trending. But hey, at least you guys are in the playoffs. So I'm sitting here looking at mock draft boards. I'm like an expert in the October mock drafts with being a Giants fan for the last decade.
So, like, in that sense, I don't know, Brian. So, okay, like, yeah, it is nice to be in the playoffs, and I guess you got to make it to the dance, to have a chance, right? But my sentiments are sort of the same with Mikey as far as the one and done kind of take, because we're coming off the heels off of the Seahawks loss. You beat the Giants, and even at that, Tyrod Taylor makes the game in one half, and then you lose to the Cardinals. So you're not in good shape going against a team that's in the playoffs. Are you looking at this postseason going, okay, let's just take it game by game and see where the Eagles are going? Or are you more interested in kind of looking at, what the Eagles can do to build this team in the offseason? Because I'm starting to teeter to say it's probably more important right now to kind of keep an eye on the offseason, because I don't think that this team is cut to go into the postseason, deep into the postseason.
I'm not looking at the offseason just yet, right? And to kind of piggyback on the AJ Brown thing, he's kept silent because how much the offense sucks, and he's frustrated. And I think people are taking that for like as a Terrell Owens thing, but he's actually not approaching it in that manner. He's actually like it came out. Jordan Mailata said that he actually he held a team out in that escape room to create that camaraderie, which shows you like something's going on in the locker room that nobody knows. But to go to the postseason, obviously the Eagles are going to the playoffs. I'm not going to say if they go to playoffs, but I'm looking at Nick Sirianni because this is your moment, dude. Like you can prove, like you said, you're either a CEO, right, or you're that guy. Like you came over here because of your offensive philosophy and because you were a branch off of Frank Reich, who everybody loves in Philadelphia. You got to show you got balls, dude. Like you're gonna go into the playoffs. People expect you to lose. Your team is unraveling right before your hands, and it drives me nuts that week in and week out, he gets on the podium and he says, "We're not playing to our standard, like we said before, and we're trying not to be predictable." Trying not to be predictable is actually showing that you're pretty damn predictable. Like people expect a QB draw on 3rd and 20 now. Like where are we right now? Like not even Madden would try that. Like come on. But this playoffs, I would define Nick Sirianni, and I wrote about this. It was kind of like people were shitting on me because I said Nick Sirianni is going to be the downfall of Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie because of exactly what you said, where it's a front office ran organization, because this was their yes man. So it's time to show that you're not the yes man, that you are the guy. You're the same guy that led them to the Super Bowl. That wasn't just Shane Steichen. It wasn't Jonathan Gannon. No, it was you being the brain power behind everything. And right now, you should have taken over play calling right after the loss to the Cowboys, but you didn't. Yeah. You shouldn't be worried about Matt Patricia or Sean Desai. You should have kept Sean Desai where he was, because he held Pat Mahomes down. He held Tua down. He held the Dolphins offense down when they were steaming. He's a terrible manager right now, but he's a good manager of people. I think that's the best way to say it, right? Like he's that guy in the room that people know he's great, but he's fucking up right now bad.
Yeah, well, he's got to keep it together, because if there is problems in the locker room, like the one positive from the Giants season, just tying it back to them for a second. And I know earlier I said, like, when you're a head coach, like some of the things you look for is like, what are you good at? Like, what do you bring to the table? In a season that went to hell and really could have spiraled completely out of control from the Giants' perspective, where they were getting blown the heck out early, like they've been surprisingly competitive in some of these games down the stretch. So like that's a little bit of a glimmer of hope if I'm a Giants as a Giants fan. Yeah, like from Brian Dable's perspective, it's like we were sitting here literally a month and a half ago saying, is this going to be another 2 years and done regime? Like, it was that bad for a minute, and then once everybody got depleted with injuries and they actually started showing some fight, you're like, okay, well, at least he didn't completely lose the locker room. So I think for Sirianni's, from your point to Sirianni to show some, I think you said show some balls or whatever it is, he's got to make sure that like he has them ready to go. Right? They have enough talent where they're going to be they should be competitive in that first round matchup. So it'll be interesting. But that's funny,
Definitely.
Eric's looking towards the off season. I'm sitting here 2 weeks ago, like trying to do the math, like how the Giants can get into the playoffs still. Like my friends are like, dude,
Yeah,
give it up.
I'm opposite right now. Like I know that I look at it in a way where it's like, okay, and I don't know, maybe this is just kind of like the hockey state of mind as well, because you kind of like you have a much bigger like bracket where it's like, okay, I don't think this team is going to compete. So could they like if they were to lose that game, where did they pick from roughly? And let's start looking at how to fix this team. And obviously, part of that would be moving on from the coordinators and really trying to, to figure this out. I don't know where that begins. Like I have no idea. What I do understand is exactly what Brian was saying about AJ is that he does seem like he is the leader that you would want in there, and he's very frustrated, and pretty much echoing almost in the same way that a fan would with the offense. Because I think everybody looks at the offense and goes, "Wow, the Eagles still have all the personnel in the world on that offense, and they're underachieving." I've said that all year about this offense.
Imagine
But
Brian
with the
Daboll with this offense. You can't tell
I
me
think
this team's gonna suck. You cannot tell me. I'm just saying
right.
that.
I
That's fair
texted one
though.
of my buddies. I was like, what if Brian Dable and Nick Sirianni just switched offensive lines?
Which is funny because
Like,
Daboll denied an interview before we hired Sirianni. He didn't want to interview with Philly at all, which
oh, is
still
that the
blows my
case?
mind.
That was
Yeah,
the year before he got hired. Maybe he wanted another year with Josh Allen.
yeah, apparently so. And he did his thing. Like, imagine a guy like that with this offense. For hell, imagine Frank Wright with this offense. Like, there's so many people that you could think of that would actually do pretty damn well. Which I still don't
Yeah,
understand why they haven't brought Reich in as offensive
Right, that's what I'm
consultant.
saying.
you
Yeah.
guys are scoring though. Is like the offense like that much of an
It's
issue?
the issue with the offense is that there is no identity. There is no rhythm. There's no like what is it like? What do the Eagles do best on offense right now? Nobody can
Something that
say.
I think is a
The tush
huge
push.
issue well,
Exactly. That's not a good
that's
thing to be working.
yeah, trademark. No, well, something that's like a big example of what is wrong at the offense is when you go against the absolute worst rushing defense and you don't run the ball. You stop running the ball, I should say. Like
Yeah.
things like that. Like you find your way to veer away from what works almost purposely, and then the cover up comes in. Oh, on 3rd and 20, we wanted to be not predictable, so we did a line of scrimmage play. Hopefully, we can get 21 yards. Like the dumbest thing you could ever imagine someone to say, but they're paid to be a coach.
Oh man.
So
It's
yeah, that's
mind
where I'm
blowing.
at.
A lot of ass grabbing going on. So
Those my buddies just chiming in.
but let's talk Eagles and Giants. Because last time we met, it was actually it shouldn't have been, but it was a competitive game.
Yeah, at
We
the
saw
end there, it got
Tyrod kind of
crazy.
come in and light it up. Speaking about the quarterback like position right now, I mean, it's Tommy, right? Tommy DeVito. Is he completely out of the question now, or is it fully the
Well,
Tyrod show?
he's under contract for next year, and Tyrod's a free agent. For this week, Taylor should be the starter, but um, like moving forward, it'll be probably DeVito as a second or third stringer, Daniel Jones coming off an injury, and whatever rookie that they draft is what I would imagine.
Are you raising your hand, Eric?
Yeah, I got a question. Do you think Tyrod Taylor makes his own sauce?
Makes what?
For his chicken cutlets, makes his own sauce.
Taylor DeVito really is capitalizing on his minute in the sun there. So good for him, man.
Hey, he
Good
got
for
money,
him.
right?
That's
That's
fair.
the
That's
best
fair.
opportunity to do it.
Yeah. So Taylor, yeah, he'll probably play. He's throws a pretty deep ball, but yeah, struggles with the short ones. I don't know how that works, but apparently that's his thing.
I mean,
Well, I
another thing
think
that
when
works for you guys is Saquon is he's fighting through everything.
Yeah, I mean, again, like he's fighting through it. The offense has been historically bad, so they got a lot to fix. They got to figure out QB moving forward. They got to figure out offensive line, and really, it's a big offseason. They got to hit on whatever they do, because it'll be year 3 of this regime. And if you draft a rookie QB, you got to make sure he doesn't get killed back there. And if you end up signing a veteran or rolling with Jones and having a rookie sit, they're going to be expected to be somewhat. It can't be a disaster next year, because then this regime will be gone. That's just how it is, the life cycle in the league. So they got to figure it out.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I thought I was on mute for a second.
You're good.
My laptop. I'm using my wife's laptop today because my iPad hasn't been keeping up with my stuff lately. Defensively, you guys figured the Eagles out. I mean, it looks like everybody figures the Eagles out this season, where you have defensive players actually calling out what the Eagles are about to run before they even run it.
Bosa said that after the game. He's like, "Oh, we figured them out."
Yeah, like everybody has the blueprint now, where it's it's run, pass, RPO, QB draw. Like it's just 5 plays that they really run. But defensively, like, what are you expecting from this defense against the Eagles in the last game? I mean, I would expect this team to fight with heart, like, to kind of prove a point going into the offseason.
Yeah, again, like Wink Martindale, not sure if he'll be back next year because of the alleged tension between him and Brian Daboll. I think most Giants fans want him to come back, because any reason we were competitive in any game this season was because of the defense, not because of the offense. So they're going to do what they can. They're going to do what they can to blitz and make Jalen uncomfortable. That's what they did. They leave guys on an island. They have young corners that they leave on an island out there, and they're going to get beat. Like, Brown will have his opportunities. Smith, if he's not going, or is he out?
A lot of people are expecting him to be out because of the rolled ankle.
Does the game? I know if you win and Dallas loses,
we get the NFC East and we face the winner of
the division. But if you lose, does it affect your standing if Dallas wins and wins the division?
No, it's either we face Tampa or we face the winner of the Saints and who the Saints play. Yeah.
So you guys might even rest some people, assuming Dallas is going to beat Washington. I don't know. Did Nick Sirianni say that he was going to rest some people?
He unfortunately did. He said he might rest some people. It's not going well with the Eagles fan base right now.
I mean, I'm kind of ready to see Tanner McKee.
But the issue is not quarterback. The issue is the freaking coaching staff.
Wait. If Tanner McKee can throw like effective screen passes, that we might have to consider, because that's all we're calling anyway.
Oh man,
it's like a gimmick.
Yeah, so I mean, again, against the Wink Martindale defense, sometimes you'll get a little bit confused with the blitz packages he brings if he can get you in third and throwing obvious situations, but you're also going to have one-on-one opportunities to beat them, especially with their young corners. So
that's fair. That's completely fair.
Marshawn Lynch down there.
Yeah, I saw
without Big Dom. I think that might be it. Maybe Big Dom is just a real big glue guy.
Maybe he's the actual head coach of the Philadelphia. Yeah, we don't know.
He's like flex tape, dude.
They need him back there, man. They need him back there.
That's complete BS. Like, you really ban him from the sidelines for doing his job, mind you. Like, when a guy's getting to tussle in the middle of the field, you see all these other guys run into the middle of the field, like trainers, like that, trying to break it up. Like,
Eagles fans I talk to have that sentiment. Everybody else I talk to is like, the guy has no business being on the sidelines. Why is he getting involved with players?
You know what? I've seen him in person, so I dare anybody that has that sentiment to go see that guy in person. And you tell Big Dom that. Let me know how that goes.
If your fan base doesn't like Big Dom will bench press your fan base. That's all I got to say about it. Have you seen this man? He's an absolute unit.
49ers took out our MVP in that game. You're damn right, Zach.
Dude, Big Dom is the heart that beats. The heart is gone, dude. That's
him and that arm sleeve he has. That was a play call sheet right there. He took it with him.
I'd rather have him out there than Sirianni.
Oh, in a heartbeat, dude. If I had to hear one more thing about the standard, I'm going to lose my freaking standard.
You're going to lose my freaking standard. That's awesome.
It's funny how things change so quickly. Like, I remember I think I talked to you guys maybe 2 years ago when he got hired and he started talking about playing rock, paper, scissors.
Don't say that garden stuff.
I was like, this guy's not going to last 8 weeks in a locker room trying to lead 53 men. There's no way. And then he was a good coach, like, surprisingly. And I was like, man, like, that things change quickly. This guy is like, he's on top of his stuff. And then this year, just within the last like 5 weeks, you're like, oh my God. But even so, though, like earlier in the year, even though you guys were winning, like it just looked like there was something off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
wasn't the same, and it was like they're kind of fortunate to win these games.
Yep.
Like part of me was like, this team's not that good, but they're seven and
Yep.
one, they're 8-1, they're 9-1. But then the other part of me was like, well, you have to give them credit. They're finding ways to win. It's like that championship pedigree. Like that's a positive that they're not playing well. Jalen Hurts after the game was like, we played like shit, but we're still winning. So in my mind, I'm like, man, if they can ever figure it out, they're 8-1, 9-1 without playing well. Jeez. But then I guess now that we look back, it's like, well, the signs were there that there was maybe a lot more wrong that you should have been, or we all should have been concerned about or saw coming at some point. But
I'm convinced that AJ Brown was playing one-on-one with Nick Sirianni in the conference room, and he dunked on Nick Sirianni, and now Nick Sirianni is plummeting the season because of that. I'm a little embarrassed.
oh my God.
It's
So
almost like I look at this team and at its optimum, like if they ever kind of found that stride, like you were saying, Mikey, that they would probably be like a 13-2 team,
mhm.
right? Like those are, I mean, honestly, well, actually, yeah. If they, I don't know, maybe they would be a 13-2 team. Maybe it's only the
Well, what's the record
49ers that they
now?
find.
11 and
Oh,
5.
11-5.
Yeah.
So,
I
like, if
mean,
they found
they're
their
not far
stride,
off.
maybe they'd be a little bit better. But I look at this 11-5 right now, and the way
Don't you
that
say it.
dude, and look, and
Don't you
Zach is
start.
Zach's in the chat already mad, but I put it right in the chat already. Beat you all to it, dude. Go to the top message. 11-5, dude. They should probably be an 8-8 team. Like, to be fair, like there's a lot of luck and happenstance that went into winning some of these games where coverage was blown, where things just went right one time. It's luck, and you can call it luck.
That's football, though. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
give the
that's
wins
fair.
back, right? Like last year, the Giants were on the right side of some wins. They win. They get Coach of the Year. They go to the playoffs. They win a game. They won a lot of close games this year. They're losing a lot of close games. It's just part of football.
But in the same sense, though, when I say luck, and they were on the right side of that luck, the bad side of that luck caught up. In a lot
Yeah,
of senses as well. So I do
that's fair.
think that you were kind of this team, um, not in the player's sense, but in the maybe in the way that we looked at this team and the perception was sort of like, oh, they're going to be great. We have nothing to worry about, and it's like, no, there was a lot to worry about the entire time.
Yeah. The
Is it
the other
14
thing
and
that
2? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
The other thing I look at, like big picture wise, is like maybe there was a little something to what Bosa said. How there's film on Jalen. Jalen Hurts was fantastic last year. He's still having a good year this year, but not as good as last year. And like now that there's a year of film on him, like it's hard. Like once you get film on a guy, like that's why Purdy, everyone was like, when's he gonna fall off? And he hasn't. He's been great. He had a couple bad games, but like DeVito, like a guy that comes in and plays, it's like once you get film on somebody, and like last year was Hurts's breakout campaign, like his monster season, and teams got film on him. Defensive coordinators started playing them a different way. Now he's got the contract that hasn't kicked in yet. It's going to be hard to keep AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. You got Kelsey and Lane Johnson, who have been Hall of Fame linemen, who are like at the end, close to the back nine, close to the 18th hole in their careers. Like, so
yeah.
like I'm sitting here looking at like if like this was the window almost. It seems as if I'm hoping as a Giants fan this was the window, and now when the money kicks in, and the same thing with other guys too. Like when Burrow, when that money kicks in, they're not going to be able to keep T Higgins and Jamar Chase. Like their window of like this will be the best team talent personnel wise that Jalen Hurts will probably have around him for the rest of his career in terms of the offensive line and skill position, just with the way that the money works and with some guys on their way out. So I look at it like that. They're going to need to retool and replenish some of those players if they're not able to keep them all, or if some of them end up retiring.
And that's what I think a lot of, that's pretty much what we're looking at is a probably 2 to 3 year retool because
Not
you're
even
going to have.
because
Well, I think you will because you have to still figure out what is this defense with people who haven't played and and miss time, and you still have to figure out uh, how to replace what you have on that offensive line because so much of this rushing attack that Jalen Hurts has predicates on how good the offensive line is,
Yeah.
especially
yeah,
the brotherly shove.
that I definitely agree with, and I feel
Is
like we
Kelsey
might.
retiring, by the way, or like
I think we get another year of
I
Kelsey.
I'm pretty sure he is.
I think we get another year of him, but you kind of sparked the light bulb in me, Mike, because I was looking at the contract in curiosity, um, and Jalen's cap hit for the next, like, they have a solid window for the next probably 2 to 3 years where his cap
Okay,
hit
it doesn't
is
get bad.
only 13 mil next season.
Got
The
it.
season after that, 21 mil, and the season after that, 31 mil.
And then
2027 is 45, but I'm pretty sure at that point they'll figure something out.
yeah, I got
But
you. All right,
I
that's
just
good.
feel
They
like,
structured it in a team
yeah,
friendly way. Yeah.
very team friendly manner, and it shows like, hey, like, we paid AJ 100 mil for 4 years when he first got here. It was kind of like, I feel like as long as they keep that nucleus together that you mentioned, AJ Brown, Devontae, and Jalen, there'll
Yeah.
always be that window will be slightly open to
Yeah, it'll be
a certain
hard to
degree.
pay Devontae though. Like it's in my eyes, it's hard to have like two premium
Yeah,
receivers paid a lot. So I don't know if they make a decision with move on from AJ Brown or if Devontae hits free agency. I'm not sure.
I just
I
hope they
think
never
they
move on from
will
AJ Brown.
probably move
Honestly,
away from AJ Brown just because they'll probably take youth.
Yeah,
So
possibly,
maybe.
but AJ's only what, like, he's 25, 26.
I
He's still
mean,
young.
youth and money, man. Like they're both going to get paid a pretty penny. I don't know that
Yeah.
you're going to keep both unless something tragic and drastic happens where it's like, oh, we got to trade somebody that we just paid a bunch of money for with it, like a whole total overhaul happens.
Well, I guess we got to start a GoFundMe and start selling your
Yeah,
organs so
I
we can
know.
afford them.
Like I don't want any part. I don't want any part of this. Like I'll never be able to financially recover, and it's not even my money.
Oh, so with the game on Sunday, what are your keys to a Giants win and over the Eagles?
uh, Probably gonna have to take advantage of the Eagles secondary. They've let up a lot of big plays, I think, on offense. I'd look for Slayton and Hyatt to try to get behind some of those guys. And credit to Slayton. He's been a leading receiver for the last 5 years for us, and I'm somebody who was pretty critical of him in the last couple of years. But the guy's done a really good job and worked hard and made himself into a competent, productive NFL wide receiver and way more consistent this year than he's been in the past with drops. And then Hyatt, Jalen Hyatt, he's a rookie. He didn't get a ton of the playing time. If you look at the film too throughout the year, like he's been behind defenses all year long, just our quarterbacks haven't gotten him the ball. From poor quarterback play to poor offensive line protection, like Hyatt probably in a different scenario with the amount of times he got behind guys could have had some better numbers. But I would look for those two guys.
It killed me when you guys drafted Hyatt. I'm not gonna lie. I had him
Oh,
going to the
really? You
Eagles
liked him?
too. I was so pissed off, man.
Yeah, he's quick. He just
He's
needed
very
to
underrated.
needed to.
A little
The
raw,
big
but he'll
knock
get there.
the big knock on him was routes, which
Yeah.
I don't think he's incapable of it. I just he wasn't asked to do a lot of that at Tennessee. But yeah, so I would look for that. I'd see if we can again if defensively we can create some turnovers. Again, the only games we've won is like when we've created a ton of turnovers. So if we can create a couple turnovers on defense and then get behind your D backs, and then we'll have a shot at it. And then again, depending on how many of your starters are playing, and then if they see, who knows, if at halftime Dallas is like up big on Washington and Sirianni sees that, like, does that affect what he does in the second half to maybe pull back the reins so like Jalen Hurts doesn't get injured and pull back some of your key guys just to make sure that you're good going into the next week, knowing that your position is essentially solidified? Or does it change if the Washington Dallas game they scoreboard watch? I'm sure the players and coaches aren't going to be doing that, but someone will maybe tell them like, yo, Washington's beating Dallas. It's the third quarter, and then it might change something a little bit. So who knows?
Maybe he'll get aggressive and actually call plays. Um, but it's it's weirdly Eric's favorite part of the show. Where he's
Is it?
actually lead us in predictions.
Is it? No.
Lead
Yeah.
us.
Let's jump into it, man. Because of the uncertainty, like, do you want to give two scores if starters play, and then another score if starters don't play? Like, how do you
One
want to do
score.
this?
One
Just
score.
one score? Okay, one score. Fuck, man, that's hard. Because I have no idea the context that I'm about to really kind of give out there. I mean, obviously, like we're in a realm now where the comfort level was, I think going into these final three games for Philadelphia was okay. Well, now we're out of that hell, and we can beat the Giants, we can beat the Cardinals. Well, that Cardinals game. and the way that Giants game wasn't convincing, that's part of the panic that should have happened weeks before that. If starters do play this game, I still do think Philadelphia I mean, this is an important win all of a sudden because I do think that Philadelphia will get the win if starters play, and I'm not going to go on that because we don't know how they could scoreboard watch if Washington, is leading that game and things go that way, then why not try to go for the NFC East? So in that case, it'll still be close. I would say like something to the effect of 27-24. Philadelphia if starters play, and so that's what I'm rolling with.
Okay, fair. So you're saying the Eagles are losing to keep the brand alive?
I have no idea
What
anymore.
was the
But
score?
I will say this: Tyrod Taylor and his deep ball and our just inability to really have effective coverage scares. Like that's the way the Giants win this game. That's how it goes. Tyrod, I think, will have a fantastic day, and I hope he doesn't, obviously, because I'm gonna go wholehearted homer on this. But at the same time,
Yeah,
I'm just like, dude, I want Philadelphia to kind of get this morale victory. They need it more than I think any other team that's going to be in the postseason.
sure.
Fair.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
To answer your question, Mikey, is 33-25 last game.
That was the last one. Yeah, 33-25. Okay. You want my score?
Yeah, let's go with it.
I'm gonna go 31-27 G-men. And it's going to be one of those scenarios where like it's going to feel really good for Giants fans, and then after the fact we're going to realize, did we just miss out on Drake May or a quarterback for winning this this morale boosting game that makes me feel good at 7:35 on Sunday evening, and then Monday morning I'm upset about it. So it's going to be one of those games where like it's weird. I always talk to people that actively root against their team, and I can never do that for draft picks. And even during the week, if I'm like, okay, like we're getting this draft pick, if we lose, we get this draft pick. Once Sunday happens, when I'm sitting in front of the TV, like there's just something inside of me that changes.
Oh, that's
And
absolutely true. Like the times
yeah,
I've picked against the Eagles a healthy amount of times this season as well. But every single time I get to a Sunday or a Thursday or a Monday,
I
whatever
can't
day
do it.
they're
Yeah,
on, I'm full just panic mode because it's like if they don't win, the existential dread of a Tuesday is there.
yeah. Or a bad call, like will just tick me off. Like when they called on our center, like an offensive penalty when I thought it was on a defense against you guys 2 weeks ago. I was like, no. So, and then at the end with the ref spotting the ball, Saquon had to spot the ball because the ref wasn't doing his job. That was egregious too, but whatever. So then when I sit there and watch, I'm like rooting for them to win. But then in some of these games that they've lost but shown good effort, I'm like, oh, good. The coach has a culture. He didn't lose the locker room. They're fighting hard for him. The season didn't completely spiral, but we still lost and we still have a good draft pick. Like in the middle of the week, that's how I rationalize it in my head.
Meanwhile, the
So
Eagles 11-5 going to the playoffs, and the coach has lost the culture, has lost the locker room.
not completely yet. I mean, you can't say that yet, but I mean, if
You
it's one and
know,
done, it's going to be an awkward offseason for them.
we're
Very
gonna hear
awkward.
more about it tomorrow.
Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of something I wanted to touch on after Brian gives his prediction. But go
All
Oh
right,
ahead,
what's
yeah.
your
I'm
score?
Mike.
going 14-2.
14-2. What's the score going to be?
14-2.
14-2.
14-2. I love that score. I love
That's
that
some
score.
score. That's some
Nah.
scoreigami.
All right.
um, Eagles have put up 30 points the last 2 games. Giants are fighting for pride.
Eagles are fighting for pride.
Eagles are fighting for something. I'll go 35-28 Philly. Just for the 35-28 Philly, just for the simple fact that they're gonna have a little fight in them, because everything that's going on. And I think Eric, you're segueing to the AJ Brown
Yeah.
announcing he's talking tomorrow.
So yeah, he said he's going to be talking tomorrow. I think his frustration's not. It's a lot less on the players, I think, and I think it's
Oh yeah,
how much of that do you think is going to be aimed at the coordinator? How much do you think it's going to be aimed at Sirianni?
I
And
think
or do
it'll
you
be
think it's
very
more of a blanket
political.
thing,
It'll be very
like a
political.
diplomatic
Yes,
response?
but it's
Okay.
already leaked out that he's very dissatisfied with the coaching staff. And bro, like
I would
we've all
just
played
air it
sports in
out
high
at this
school,
point.
right? Like
Like I
we've
know it
all
sucks, but I would be just, like, yo, like this is kind of how I feel because they don't have to answer any more questions about it.
yeah, just let it all out. And I don't see a problem with players doing that. I do see a problem with players doing the TO approach, where like you do push-ups in the driveway and don't show up to training camp, and you start crying about your who your quarterback is. I see a problem with that. That's a bit too much, right? But if a player comes out and says, like, as a collective group from the coaching staff to us, where nobody's doing their job right, like we're just not doing our job right. But then you also see behind the scenes where this guy is like Brenton Covey had a great punt return, right? And you see him celebrating Brent Covey on the sidelines, a guy who, last year fans wanted him out because he was terrible, and this year he had a breakout season. Then you see in the locker room them mentioning that AJ wants set up an escape room for everybody. AJ's doing this for everybody. AJ Brown has never been a bad player for the Eagles, and I feel like that needs to leave the mindset of a lot of Eagles fans, because truth be told, you're gonna screw this up for the fan base than any player or any media member in the Eagles NovaCare complex would, because
Yeah.
you bringing that to the light so much, where it's like AJ's a diva, AJ's this, AJ's that. Dude, it's coming from the fan base, and if it's coming from the fan base, why would
He
a
wants
player
to
want to
win.
stay
Yeah, I
here?
mean, he wants
That's all
to win.
it is.
It looks bad when like his numbers are fantastic and you see him yelling and complaining on the sideline because he is getting a lot of targets and stuff. So it does look bad. But in his defense, like the offense this year, there's no creativity. They're not scheming anybody open. Anytime they make a play, it's because those receivers are good. It's not just because they're scheming people open. You watch other offenses, you get players schemed wide open because of the creativity of the offensive play design and the offensive play call. Whereas the Eagles had that last year. This year, they don't have any of that. They're a little bit predictable. So, like, they're winning on offense because of the talent on offense. They're not
Exactly.
schematically outdoing anybody. Like, A.J. Brown's going to go up and get it. Like, he's covered. He's going to go up and get it. Devontae Smith's going to shake you and get open because he's good. It's not the scheme that's getting them open,
Right.
which is like, again,
Exactly.
when you're talented, you don't have to worry about it. But, like, coming from a player who watches a lot of untalented offensive players as a Giants fan the last few years, we've had to like scheme and earn every inch that we get throughout the field. So,
And that's the thing, like they're overproducing in a scheme that's not built to win. Like this scheme is very vanilla, for lack of a better term. I feel like anybody and it drives me nuts. I told my wife this. I'm like, I don't get how people can suck at the job that everybody wants.
Right.
I don't
No,
get
and
it.
I wanted to kind of harp on that a little bit. How is it that it was Desai who really didn't have much of a background, but your other options ended up being Fangio and ended up being Patricia? Like none of that was good. You would have failed 3 times. Like how? Who is making this decision? And that person needs to look in the mirror and figure it out.
It's the scapegoat of it is going to be Nick Sirianni, because you are the face, you're the coach, you're the guy, you're the one everybody is supposed to look to. The issue with him, and I forgot who mentioned in the chat, Sean Sunstrom mentioned in the chat, is that Nick Sirianni was pretty much a cheerleader last year, which technically he was, right? He wasn't calling the plays. Shane was. He wasn't really doing much on defense. Jonathan was. And this year you're doing the same thing, but Brian Johnson is not doing anything productive.
There was a lot of this going on.
There was a ton of that, and then
he's
the
talking
downfall,
to the fans in Kansas City.
I was gonna say that the downfall is right there, bro. What are you yelling at the fans for, bro? Like, come on, just do your job, get the win, get out of there, call it a day. Like, I love his energy, and when you see him celebrating with the guys, when you see him doing things like that, I love the antics. But
Yeah,
at some point,
he's
you
one of
gotta
those
hold.
classic guys. If
Yes.
it's your team, you love him. If not, you hate him. Like I think
Yeah.
he's the biggest douche I've ever seen in my life. Right?
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but
But at
that's,
some point, you got to hold
from the
yourself
outside.
accountable, and you got to be like, okay, like, no, I got to put my big boy pants on today. I can't put my clown pants on today. Like, we got to fix this, and we got to fix this. Should have happened a long time ago, because it's week 18 and it's a whole new year now. Like, and it's still a shitstorm going on.
Well, the good news is you have us that you're playing, and you guys own us. So
That's
it should be a
never good news.
get
We
right
lost to the
spot.
Cardinals last week. I don't want to hear about that.
It's never good news though, because that's the thing. It's like we felt that way about the Cardinals. Like, oh, we'll go win. No, you won't go win.
I woke up Sunday
anything.
feeling good. Like, it's New Year's Eve. We're gonna do family today. We're gonna win. It's just easy. And I'm watching the game.
It
like,
was offensive,
bro.
It was offensive. 2023.
Yeah, it was terrible. But I guess one last question before we head out. Sean in the chat asked, do we think honestly, that Nick Sirianni can get canned if the season only lasts 2 weeks. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they can the coordinators and they give him an opportunity to work with veterans next year. But I don't think they get rid of Nick Sirianni just yet.
And if that's the case, I don't think that a mid-season firing would be unreasonable.
You mean next year?
Yeah.
Well, here's what you do. You hire Frank Reich as your offensive coordinator, right? You fire Nick mid-season just for him yelling at a fan, and you got your head coach right there, Frank Reich.
No, Big Dom should be the head coach, dude.
He'll be
No, the
back.
49ers will cry about that too. Freaking crybaby.
That's why the storyline writes itself. There's the script.
Freaking
The next
whiner.
year's script. There's the rough draft.
But Mikey, man, and we appreciate you for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have a fun time every time we do this. Anytime, guys.
Yeah, you're our
pleasure.
Giants guy as much as Eric and Zach will say I'm the Giants guy, even though I'm
Ryan's
not a Giants
also
fan.
Giants guy.
But we appreciate you coming on, taking the time out, man. You know, happy birthday to your daughter. You said she's turning 4.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
And
happy
hey,
birthday.
and you
Hell
enjoy
yeah.
Sunday and you enjoy this new year, man. Hopefully it brings you a lot of blessings.
All right, guys. You too. Have a good one.
All right, take care, Mikey.
Take care. And go
care.
Birds.
Oh, damn, I didn't end the show yet.
I was going to end it. I was going to end it right there. Go Birds. Happy birthday, Mikey's daughter. Just hit the dang button.
Good night, guys.
Flipping the birds.